So my name's Ben Manette from the Bookshelf, and I've been lucky enough to be working with some really smart people from the Canadian Independent Booksellers Association, as well as the Ministry of Canadian Heritage, along with my father, who's the Executive Director of SIBA. And we've got some big news, just about ways that we're going to be able to sell a lot more Canadian books. Independent bookstores in Canada are the best way of selling Canadian books, and we're going to be able to do even better at our job. So I'd like to introduce MP Lloyd Longfield to make the announcement. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Ben. Thanks, Ben. And this is part of a nationwide group of announcements that's going on right now that Minister Rodriguez has led us off with an announcement a few minutes ago in Montreal, Minister of Canadian Heritage. And I'm really excited to be here and to see some familiar faces and some authors that have joined us as well, who are also familiar faces. And the work that the Bookshelf has done through COVID to keep the Canadian story alive in our community and actually expand it in new services and ways of reaching the local community that takes use of online, but also just ingenuity locally. So congratulations, Ben, and your team here. That's not exactly why we're here, other than to say having a store like the Bookshelf in downtown Guelph really helps us to support Canadian authors. And also, we're in the downtown, which is situated on treaty land that's steeped in history, with rich Indigenous history locally, with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. Acknowledging the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation of the Anishinaabe peoples, on whose traditional territory that we're standing, and I'm speaking to you from. I'm also pleased to see that our renowned local award-winning authors are here today, as well as the Guelph Public Library team and of course the Bookshelf team, to celebrate this wonderful announcement. Bookstores are amazing places, and I've been in this room quite a few times. And it's great to be here to make an announcement, but I also want to be browsing. It's just a natural thing you want to do when you're here. Even the smell of the paper and the atmosphere that we have really is a welcome invitation for all of us to look at the possibilities and perspectives that are all around us when we're in a store like this. And I love it every chance I have. That's in my notes, but it's great to come in here, and whether it's here or having a coffee or upstairs enjoying a movie, which is now accessible as well. And my wife and I attended a movie not too long ago where the story of A Piece by Chocolate was put on the screen. And just thinking about where we've come as a country in terms of how we welcome people and how we have to do a better job every day, not only welcoming people, but acknowledging the original people that we came to settle on their land. But it's the digital world that opens up the possibilities. And in fact, our bookstores are constantly pushing the limits to open up to a new world for all of us, especially here at the Bookshelf. Budget 2021 provided $32.1 million over two years to support the efforts of the Canadian book industry and to help increase online book sales. Last March, it was announced that a large part of this support would be provided through a new component of the Canada Book Fund and the Support for Bookstores component. This was designed to help Canadian booksellers increase their online sales and to reach readers in Canada and around the world. So today I'm pleased to share that 180 Canadian booksellers, representing nearly 470 stores across Canada, will be receiving $12 million in funding through this new component. 177 of them are going to get support under the funding envelope available to small chains and independents. The funding will be distributed through a formula based on past sales of Canadian authored books. every time I have a line, I want to go sideways and say some of that was actually software created in Guelph. How bookstores track their sales and their inventory and their relationships with their publishers and the authors are all part of the digital background that we need to support programs like this. Of course, large chains also have a role in expanding the reach of Canadian books, and some similar supports are available to them under a separate funding envelope. But this is the first time we've offered funding to booksellers so that all of these bookstores are new recipients. The support for booksellers component has been designed to deliver special additional support to booksellers as they continue to offer content from a wide variety of Canadian authors and illustrators to our community. So I'm happy to announce today, the first part of this, the bookshelf will be receiving $23,024 through the Canada Book Fund for Independent Booksellers. Also today, I want to recognize the funding going to the Canadian Independent Booksellers Association. And Ben's mentioned that Doug Manette is the executive director and in fact the founder of the Canadian Independent Booksellers Association. And they're receiving $156,575 for their national digital marketing campaign, building on Doug's previous work here in Guelph. It's been through hard work and advocacy by the CIBA founders, and Doug has assembled quite a team across Canada. And they've seen challenges, and they've looked at the independent distribution of books in Canada, competing, fulfilling online orders to their customers with international online platforms. And I'm pleased to see that we're supporting the Canadian portion of digital media, which also helps us expand into new markets globally. So with the holiday shopping season now upon us, and the Downtown Business Association is here, looking forward to the parade coming up, and I'm happy to share this announcement for the bookshelf, which encourages local shopping, and it also supports Canadian literacy. So that's the formal part of my announcement. Also offline, the I Read Canadian, just another successful year for I Read Canadian, and congratulations to Eric Walters for that. Over 2,600 schools that participated. 3,200 and counting. So 3,200 this year, knocked it out of the park. And that gets kids and parents and guardians reading books together and celebrating Canadian authors in rooms across Canada, including our classrooms. So it all ties together to happy reading experiences in the library and the authors and the bookstore and the publishers and the entire network that we have to try and keep going and keep alive and thriving in Canada. And hopefully this helps. Thank you. More news to come, so stay tuned, Adam. Are there any questions? Yes?
Yes, Santana from Guelph today.
Okay.
So how do we promote local bookstores like the Bookshelf in the digital sphere and boost the local economy when there's, Amazon and Indigo? How do we compete with those big sellers?
We're working on the digital platforms where business is done and reviewing that right now through legislation that's in the House. So it is part of a broader discussion that you really rightly point out, is how online marketing is done in Canada. That legislation hasn't changed since the mid-90s, before we had online platforms. And so it was started in the last Parliament, then there was an election, I can't remember when that happened, but it was about a year ago. And now it's back in Parliament, so we'll be seeing how we make sure that the playing field is fair for everybody, and that they're paying their share, especially when they're selling in Canada. Yeah.
Is this an economic announcement or a cultural announcement?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, when you look at the Bookshelf and what it does to the downtown, it's a destination point. And having multiple things under one roof with the restaurant and cinema and the Bookshelf draws people to the downtown core. So absolutely, it's economic, but it also reflects the culture in Guelph and the culture of independence in Guelph and creative thinking that we have in Guelph. Bookshelf has become one of those touchstones in Guelph where creative people gather and share their stories and write news stories. So, and the University of Guelph is part of that network as well. I was at a Tom Cochrane concert at the River Run a few weeks ago, and he said, I wrote this song in the library at the University of Guelph. So sometimes you need those places to be creative and to share with other people that are also creative. So economic and cultural. You can have both.
Then the question is, what other ways is the federal government looking at supporting downtown cores going around the block here? There are some open storefronts. There are other businesses that could probably use that help to recover or build back or overcome, specific issues to the downtown. What else is tease this other news you mentioned?
Yeah, you're doing your job as you always do. We are working with downtown business associations, and there will be some announcements hopefully soon on that. And we've also just opened up a funding stream, the second round of a funding stream about recovering downtowns. And what's the name of it?
The Tourism Relief Fund.
The Tourism Relief Fund, that's right. So Tourism Relief Fund, how do you stimulate activities which draw tourism to downtown cores? Ms. Barton.
Thank you very much, Lloyd. I did have a question though. I know that one of the things that was put on the table was, well, to go back a step. In Quebec, libraries have to buy from independent bookstores.
Right.
And I'm wondering where that might go in the rest of Canada.
Yeah. Well, I would, 2 or 3 levels to that right off the bat is that in Quebec, they're culturally ahead of most of Canada in most things, because they are protecting a culture that is under threat. And so language culture and the French culture itself is something that they've got very good at, that the rest of the country can learn from. The Canadian Independent Booksellers Association includes Quebec, and when Doug was forming that, we had several conversations, and I kept asking Doug, who's on your board from Quebec? He said, wait, just wait. And then he's landed a very strong board member from Quebec. So the Independent Booksellers Association is a national group that is intended to share the best practices. Where the federal government can come in would be the third level, and that's in terms of regulations through CRTC or other channels that we could use to set up some national standards for how books and other creative products move into our communities and throughout our communities. Using libraries is brilliant. Schools and libraries are really the go-to, that if you can get those shelves, you can get other shelves. So can't speak on behalf of Ontario, that's the fourth piece, and then that gets into political stuff that we've had a bit of a week of it in Ontario, and it was great to see the labor movement doing what they're doing to protect Canadians' rights. Hopefully we can protect environmental rights in the Greenbelt and find ways to do that, and we can also protect culture in Ontario.
Question for Ben, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'll turn my camera on. Can you talk about what portion of the bookshelf sales are currently accounted for in terms of online sales, and maybe talk a bit about how this funding might expand those opportunities?
I can. So it's been really interesting just to see how online sales react to what's going on in the news and what's going on in life. And what we really noticed throughout the pandemic was that online sales would go up very much as sort of COVID went up. But for now it's sort of like normalized, and a lot of people are coming into the store. But I'd probably say right now about 20% of our sales are online.
Cool, thank you.
And that channel took off during COVID, which was incredible to see. Some people went into the basement and covered their heads and hoped everything would go over, but you grabbed it by the horns and went with it.
Well, a lot of it was just luck. Like, we literally finished the buy button on our website the week before the first lockdown.
It's funny how lucky you get when you work hard.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I feel like we should have a party here. 23,000 doesn't quite have to cover all that. It's good to have everybody here, and thank you for taking the time out of the day for coming. We walked over here with the Canadian flag, and I thought, okay, we're not a truck convoy. You know, we still own the flag as well. We're Canadian citizens. We can walk down the street with a flag. And it's nice to be able to walk over here as well and to be part of the downtown experience. So, nice to be home. Back to Ottawa Monday.
No.
Yeah, then back during the holiday period. So thank you. Thanks for coming.